On today's episode, we have a twofer. The first half of the episode, we're going to dip into the mailbag powered by Dakota Lithium to answer your fishing questions about jig trailers, stinger hooks, temu lures, swivels, swim baits, and more. And then the second half of the episode, we're joined by David Hoheisel, owner of the National Fishing Expos, to give all of you locals around here in the Ohio area a sneak peek at the 2024 National Fishing Expos Columbus stop, February 9th through 11th, where you'll be able to come hang out with folks like yours truly. All that and more on this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
Welcome to the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are not possible without the great folks over at American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. And if you're looking for rods, reels, line, baits, anything you could need, American Legacy Fishing should be the first place you check because they have the best service in the industry, literally the best service from anybody I've ever ordered from, hands down, not even just talking as a partner, talking in general. Over the past 15 years or so that I've been ordering fishing tackle, I have never had experiences as good as I've had with American Legacy in terms of helping me find the right gear, in terms of answering my questions, helping me, heaven forbid I ever have an issue. ALF is by far the best in the business, but they also have great fast shipping and they have the best sales on the internet. They have a price match guarantee that's in writing. You find a better price on a different website, email them, message them, they will match it. They want to make sure you get the best gear at the best price with the best service in the industry. So head over AmericanLegacyFishing.com, check out the new gear, check out their great selection of used gear. If you want to save a little money on some gently used rods or reels, they're a great place to check for you folks out there that are like me and a lot more budget conscious. But whatever you're buying over there, be sure to use code TACKLETALK10. Tackle Talk 10 at checkout saves you 10% off almost everything on the website that's regularly priced. 10% off every day, all day long with code TACKLETALK10 over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. All right, folks. First up today, we're going to jump right into the mailbag powered by Dakota Lithium. We've got your fishing questions, a ton of different topics that we're going to get to for the first half of this episode.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Mailbag, powered by Dakota Lithium Batteries. Adventure awaits at dakotalithium.com.
All right, the first question here is from Randy, and he says, "Hey, Andrew, I have a question for the mailbag. Maybe I missed it on previous episodes, but which species can stay out of the water the longest, a rainbow trout or a largemouth bass?" So if you're fishing for both of those, a rainbow trout is by far more delicate than a largemouth bass. Now, with that being said, you don't want to hold either of them out of the water that long. Obviously, you want to keep that fish in the water as much as possible. Get something like a net, a live well, a donkey leash, something to keep that largemouth bass in the water as much as you can before you're taking pictures and all that kind of stuff. A rainbow trout, I'm not a trout expert by any means, but if you ask someone that is like really passionate about trout, not only are they telling you not to keep them out of the water for very long, they're telling you not to keep them out of the water at all. Like, don't have them completely, out of the water, holding them up for pictures. Don't be handling them too much because they die really easily. I've actually seen that happen. I've gone and fished for brown trout, so not a rainbow trout, but, pretty close. And, I'll hook them with a treble hook, and you'll just see these fish that were like barely hooked in the tongue or in the side or something. They just bleed out and die, like right off the bat. So that's why you see a lot of people that are true trout anglers going out there with like barbless hooks. They've got these nets that have these, really special rubber netting so that they can keep the fish in there and it doesn't damage their scales or their skin or whatever it is. Like, I just know that trout are very, very sensitive and you have to handle them with way more care than you do with like a largemouth or a smallmouth or something like that. So similar to like if you're going to go out and musky fish for the first time, you should have a musky net so that you can handle that fish properly. You should know how to handle that fish. You should have, wire cutters to be able to get that hook out of that fish's mouth in a timely manner. Similar thing to targeting something like a trout. You should have the right net. You should know how to handle that fish. There's like a specific duty, I guess, that comes along with targeting a specific species like those, whether it be rainbow trout, muskie, something similar that has these little nuances that you have to do to take care of that fish differently than you do like a largemouth bass. A largemouth bass, pretty much, you can hold it up for a picture. Just don't hold it, diagonal and break its jaw or something, but hold it vertical, hold it horizontal. Doesn't really matter. Keep it out of the water for a few seconds, take a picture, put that fish back in the water. With trout, very differently. So yeah, I would say by far a largemouth can stay out of the water longer than a rainbow trout. Neither one should be out of the water that long. All right, the next question is from Anthony, and he says, "Hey, Andrew, my name is Anthony, and I have a Tackle Talk two-part question. Part one, I'm new to fishing and was solely a bank fisher and pond hopper and river hopper the past year, but in 2024, I'd like to get a PDL kayak. What body of water would be ideal for a beginner? Part two of my question, could I get a single rider kayak that would have room enough for me and my son, who is a 4-foot skinny 7-year-old? I only carry 2 rods with a sling that has about 4 Plano boxes in it. Thanks so much for your time, and your pod has taught me so much in such a little time. Congrats on all your success." Well, thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that. Let's start with part one. So part one, you said, what's the best type of body of water to start out with your first kayak? To me, that is by far a shallow pond. So go somewhere where the water is not over your head, and go somewhere where you're not even really trying to fish. You're just getting your sort of sea legs under you for your kayak. So go to some local pond, that's 2 foot deep or 3 foot deep or whatever, where if you fall over, not a big deal. Your feet are going to hit the ground and it's not going to be an issue. I actually saw a really good video not too long ago. Dave, who's one of my friends, listens to this show. He actually took his kayak out. I think he bought a Bonafide. And for the first time, his goal was to go out there. He didn't go out with anything in it. It was completely empty. And he was going to go out there and he was going to flip it because he wanted to see how far he could push it one way or the other and get a feel for where that fail point is with that kayak. I think that's really smart. Again, he did it like right at a boat ramp where he could touch the bottom when he did fall over. He had a PFD on, took all of the precautions, but I think it's a really good idea. You do want to get a bearing for where the limits of that kayak are. And I think the best way to do that is in a place where you have little to no risk, which would be, again, 2, 3, 3.5 foot deep. Go out there and play around with it. Go stand up, pedal as hard as you can, lean over to one side or the other. Prepare to, push it to the point where you might get wet. Now, if you're doing a PDL kayak like an Old Town or something, you have to be trying to flip those kayaks to actually flip them. Like, you have to be doing something so stupid that anybody who is looking at you would be able to say, this guy's trying to flip that kayak. This guy's trying to do something stupid either for views or, to get the shot or whatever, or for clickbait, whatever it may be. You have to be doing something real dumb to tip like an Old Town PDL or something like that. But yeah, I would say go out on a pond or a lake that has a really shallow area and just go out there and kind of play around with it first. I definitely would not take it somewhere like a river with current or something first. That is a whole different skill set. You have to be really proficient with your kayak in non-current moving water right before you really want to go out and test it in current. So yeah, start with something stationary like a shallow pond or a shallow part of a lake. Part two of your question said, can I get a single rider kayak and have room for my small son? I would say no. One, it's just not safe. It's not what those kayaks are meant for. That's where you really can flip something pretty easy. If you have 2 different bodies in that kayak, both of which are kind of having their own center of gravity and their own movements and stuff like that, that's where you can run into issues. You're probably going to flip that kayak at some point, even if you do get a really stable kayak. Just 2 people in it at once is not what those kayaks are made for. So no, I would not recommend that at all, almost regardless of which kayak you buy. Those kayaks are just made for one person, not 2. No matter how small the second person is. Now, with that being said, can you do it? Is there someone out there listening to this show that probably has had a small kid in their single-seater kayak? Yep, I'm sure there is, but I'm not going to recommend it because it's not what that kayak is made for, and it's probably not safe. All right, the next question is from John, and he says, "Hi, Andrew. Love the show and appreciate all the knowledge I'm learning quickly. Quick question, I'm new to the jig game and was wondering what your go-to trailers are for the Beast Coast Lil Magnum. Thanks." Yeah, so for the Beast Coast Low Magnum, usually when I'm throwing the Low Magnum, I'm flipping. That's my number one, at least right now, flipping jig. So I'm worried about that bait on the fall. I'm not really worried too much about dragging or hopping or anything like that. I just want something that looks really good on the fall. And so to me, then the second question is what profile am I looking for? Am I looking for bulky? Am I flipping for largemouth? If I'm flipping for largemouth, I'm putting something on the back. Actually, Derek at Beast Coast makes a great trailer for it called the Flippin' Delight. And the Flippin' Delight, the one thing I would say about that is I'm going to cut off probably an inch of that Flippin' Delight to keep that Low Magnum compact. That's the best part about a Low Magnum is it's a very compact tungsten head, so you don't want, usually, at least for me, this giant bulky presentation. But if I want something with a little bit of beef to it and I'm flipping for largemouth, that Flippin' Delight is a great little beaver style bait. It's got 4 appendages on the back, very similar to something like a Berkley Pit Boss, except it's got a little bit more action to it. It's got a little bit more of an aggressive kick and look to it. It almost looks like the scarier big brother of a Berkley Pit Boss. So that's a great option, or you can just go with something like a Berkley Pit Boss. If you want something a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, again, I would go with a 4-inch Pit Boss, cut a 1/2 inch or an inch off of it. That's another great little beaver style bait to put on the back of that. If you're looking for craws, if you want something really aggressive, the smaller Rage Craws, I can't remember what they're called, the Rage Craw Mini or whatever they're called. I actually think they might be called the Baby Rage Craw. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, not Junior or anything. I think it's Baby. So the Strike King Baby Rage Craw is a great trailer for the back of that. If you want something a little bit more slender, that Strike King Scound Bug is great. If you want something that doesn't have that big of a kick, the Netbait Pack-a-Chunk Junior, the smaller version, is awesome. But there's a ton of different options you can go with. Just depends on the type of flap that you want. Or I guess if you're just working this off the bottom and you're not really flipping it and you're just sort of dragging it or working it, finesse-y for smallmouth or something, that Great Lakes Finesse Snack Craw is awesome. It's not going to have a lot of movement, but it does have floating claws. It will give you more of the look of a craw without too much action there. So there's a bunch of options for that Low Magnum, but overall, a great jig from a great company and something that I've definitely been using a lot the past year and a half. All right, the next question is from Richard, and he says, hey, I hear a lot of pros talking about trailer hooks. My question is, how and why to add a trailer hook to a spinnerbait or chatterbait? Also, what are the advantages and disadvantages of adding a trailer hook directly to the hook with a keeper versus using a leader and going with a stinger hook approach? Thanks in tight lines, Richard. Okay, so first, why would you use a trailer hook? I would say you're using a trailer hook usually when you're getting short struck. So when these fish are chasing, you can feel bites. You're just not hooking fish. A lot of times those are fish that are coming up and they're stabbing at it, they're headbutting it, they're grabbing at it, but they're just grabbing your trailer and you want an extra hook a little farther back to get those fish that are short striking it. That's where a trailer hook to me comes into play. I don't throw them a lot on chatterbaits. I actually don't know if I've ever thrown a trailer hook on a chatterbait. I never really have the issue with fish short striking a chatterbait. Usually when a fish is striking a chatterbait, they're eating that chatterbait. I don't really have too many problems where I feel a bite and I go to set the hook and there's just absolutely nothing there. With a spinnerbait, on the other hand, there's a lot more to a spinnerbait that a fish can go up and try and eat than just the hook. Most notably, they could go up and try and hit, 1 or 2 of those blades on the top. So there's a lot more of a small school of bait fish look to a spinnerbait than there is to a chatterbait. So there's a lot more chance, I think, for them to go after the wrong part. So on a spinnerbait, I will add trailer hooks a lot. And usually when I'm adding a trailer hook, I throw a spinnerbait a lot in the fall. I'm adding a trailer hook really early in the fall or really late in the fall. Usually in the middle of the fall, when those fish are munching, I don't have a problem a whole lot of times with them getting the hook. So I'll throw an actual trailer on my hook versus a trailer hook. But then when they're just kind of nipping at it, especially late in the fall when those fish start to kind of tail off from chasing bait and they're getting a little bit slower, a little bit more calculated with what they're eating and what they're not eating, then I'll add a trailer hook and I'll see a lot of fish get that trailer hook and not the main hook. But I would say the advantages to adding a trailer hook versus a stinger hook, when I think of stinger hooks, I think of, like you said, where there's the leader, then there's a hook actually behind it. And usually when I see those, may not be all the time, but my brain goes to a treble hook with that. Usually when I think of a stinger hook that's actually got the fluoro or mono leader or whatever it is, and then there's the hook behind it, a lot of times I see a treble hook on the back and not a single hook. And then to me, that would be like, well, all right, the only places that I can throw that would be open water. I can't throw that really around, really dense cover like wood. I can't throw that around weeds. I can't throw that anywhere where that treble hook could get hung up. So that's really like an open water approach, I guess. And I don't really see a whole lot of people throwing an actual stinger hook, with a leader behind it on a spinnerbait or a chatterbait. So I would say most of the time, usually it's a hook that where you would tie the line, there's just a hole there. You put that through the actual barb of your regular hook on your spinnerbait or on your chatterbait, and then you put something on there to stop it. So it could be, a piece of rubber, it could be a piece of plastic, something that you're actually going to poke through the main hook to keep that trailer hook on there. So I hope that helps you. All right, the next question here is from Camino Rob, and he says, hey, love the show and the well-balanced fishing podcast you have on the air. So my dilemma is that as an oil field worker, my fishing ability is limited. I typically do 4 to 6 week long hitches and started fishing again last summer. I'm hooked, to say the least, but with the winter time change, I only have time to fish past sunset. This has changed my strategy and really just targeting panfish for entertainment. Based on your strong recommendation, I picked up the Ned rig and have started researching tactics and strategies for using it. I have yet to catch my first fish on it, but I'm not worried. What are some tips you can share for using a Ned rig at night from the bank of a typically pressured body of water like a pond, specifically in West Texas and Southeast New Mexico? Thanks, and I appreciate all the time you put into making your show the best on air. I proudly sport my autographed Tackle Talk cap everywhere I go. Thanks, Camino Rob, San Antonio, Texas. Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. That's cool. I love that you sport the hat around. So I would say tips for Ned rigs at night is an interesting one. I would say my gut reaction tells me that at night I'm going to move that Ned rig more than I would, during the daytime, because my lizard brain says, well, it's nighttime. They can't see it as well. So I want to make sure that, we're putting a lot more motion on it so they can feel that, they can, hear it or whatever it is, and they can kind of zone in on that Ned rig. I think there's probably something to that. I would probably be a little bit more aggressive with my Ned rig at night than I would during the day. If you think back to last week's episode where we were talking about the things we learned with Berkeley, one of the things that Mark Sexton said was that they use that lateral line to feel things in close proximity. And that would be what I would assume a fish is using mostly at night to find and kill their prey. So with that, the other thing that Mark said, though, was that it's incredibly sensitive. So just the slightest movement, within a couple feet of that fish can feel and just kind of triangulate where that movement was coming from, and then boom, kill. So it doesn't take a lot of movement from Mark's perspective. So that kind of lends some credence to the opposite of what I just said, where you don't really have to put a ton of movement on it. You just have to make sure your Ned rig is in the right place. And so for me, that would mean researching that body of water ahead of time, getting really familiar with it during the daytime, or at least getting some eyes on it during the daytime so those high percentage areas to cast when it becomes nighttime. So when we night fish a lot of times around here, we'll actually go just as the sun is setting so that you get a bunch of casts in while you can still see what's going on and get your bearings about you so that you can make the right cast when the sun is down and it's pitch black without having to turn on your headlamp. The other thing I think a lot of times at nighttime is I try not to turn on a headlamp or a flashlight or anything as much as I can, because again, that kind of sets off that, hey, something unnatural is going on. There's an unnatural source of light, and I would assume that's a negative thing. So when we're out fishing for walleye or sawguy at night, the only time you turn your headlamp on is when you're landing a fish. So again, you go out there, you make a bunch of casts, and you get this kind of muscle memory and your feel for where that bait is landing, how far I cast with certain effort, what direction I want to cast, all that kind of stuff, so that again, you feel like you can do it with your eyes closed, because that's essentially what you're doing at night. So I would say, I think it's more about putting your Ned rig in the right spot than it really is some tip or magic advice about how to work that Ned rig at night. So I hope that helps. All right, we'll get right back to the mailbag here in just a second, but first, the mailbag is brought to you exclusively by Dakota Lithium batteries. You guys know we've talked about them at length on the show. Dakota Lithium batteries are my favorite batteries on the planet. And I have a story for you. I actually broke the handle on my 24-volt, 60-amp-hour Dakota Lithium battery about 3 weeks ago, maybe, and I was just kind of being careless. I threw it in my kayak, and the plastic handle snapped. And I looked at it, I was like, crap, that's going to make it kind of hard to carry now. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have broke this handle. What did I do? I emailed Dakota Lithium, and within like a week, I had a brand new replacement handle swivel at my doorstep. Good luck getting that type of service from the cheap Amazon battery that you bought that isn't even going to be available in 3 weeks on Amazon because they're going to change their name 12 times. This is what you get with someone like Dakota Lithium. I had an issue. I emailed them. They solved it immediately, and they got that new part right to my doorstep so I didn't miss a beat. That's why I love Dakota Lithium. Also, they're twice the power of traditional batteries at half the weight. They charge up to 5 times faster, last up to 4 times longer. They have 100% US-based customer support that actually helped me out a couple weeks ago, and they come with a whopping 11-year warranty. All of that from the best batteries in the business, and I'm going to save you money on them because if you use code TACKLETALK10, TackleTalk10 at checkout, you're going to save 10% off the best batteries in the business. Code TackleTalk10 over at www.dakotalithium.com, the official lithium battery of Bassmaster. All right, let's get back to the mailbag here. The next question is from Joe, and he says, "Hi, Andrew. I have a quick question for the mailbag, as well as a quick comment. I'll start with the question. I've heard you advocate for using snaps on different episodes, but on one of those occasions, you also specified that you're not an advocate for the snaps with the swivels attached. Can you expound on that? Is that universal, or are there occasions where a snap with a swivel is okay to use? Secondly, I really enjoyed your episode a while back on temu purchases. I have made a number of temu lure purchases prior to your episode, and I'll never do it again. And I'll tell you why. I'm on an extremely tight budget, and so over the summer, I bought a few temu lures, including a few temu whopper ploppers. I caught a handful of bass on them at first. However, at the end of the summer, I went out on a lake with a friend. He had a river to sea whopper plopper, and I had my temu plopper. He caught 10 plus bass in the few hours of fishing that evening. Meanwhile, I went 0 for 14. I never thought I would have ever been skunked while having 10 plus strikes, but it happened. The hardware on those temu lures becomes useless after a few weeks, and lesson learned. From now on, I will suck it up and buy the real deal. Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head with the problem with cheap lures in general. If you're buying something and it is at a price that is too good to be true, usually the number one thing they're going to skimp on is hardware. And so if you're okay with changing your hardware, you can get away with buying a lot of cheap lures and have success with them, but you saw right there why you have to change the hooks. Those hooks do not hold up well. There is a reason why, the Gamakatsus of the world and the owners of the world and people like that can charge premium prices for their treble hooks and their regular hooks and all kinds of stuff because they stand up to the abuse that we put them through as fishermen. Yes, that temu lure might come with a razor sharp hook at first, but that hook is going to bend out way sooner than a more expensive treble hook would. So you saw that firsthand. Yeah, definitely something you have to keep in mind. If you're buying cheap lures, you probably are going to have to change the hardware at some point. But your original question was about snaps and snap swivels. The one thing I'll say about snap swivels, I don't like snap swivels because a swivel, one, it's more hardware on there, right? You're taking something that my argument is that small little snap, that speed clip is not going to affect the visual part of your lure. A giant snap swivel that's, like an inch long or half an inch long or whatever could be something that a fish could probably see. So if you're putting a snap swivel on an ultra finesse rig like a Ned rig or something, that might be something that looks a little unnatural to that fish. But beside that, it just imparts a different action on that lure that was not intended. And it allows full rotations of your lure and of your line because, again, it spins. So now you don't have that restriction on your lure that either a knot or a snap has. Because a snap, even if you just snap to your lure and you have like an eyelet and you put your snap through, it still can only go, maybe there's 30, 40 degrees that snap can move back and forth, but it can't do a full rotation. It has a little bit more give than a knot, but it acts like a knot. It just acts like a looser knot, right? With a snap swivel and something that can actually do full rotations, well, now it's completely different because there's not that restriction from your line to your lure that keeps it from being able to roll without twisting your whole line. So it's not something that I really like to use. Now, there are places for it. Again, we've talked about this, I think at least, we've talked about this on the show before. The one place I used to use snap swivels was when I would get really upset with things like whopper ploppers from the last question, rolling on themselves. And I would actually use snap swivels to hopefully overcome that. And it did help a little bit because, again, now you're allowing full rotations between your line and your lure, and now the lure is not feeling like it has to twirl on itself. So something like a whopper plopper that's having issues rolling over on itself, a snap swivel might have its place. But other than that, I don't use snap swivels because it's one, unnecessary, two, can change the action of my bait, and three, it's just a lot more hardware than a regular snap is. So I don't use snap swivels. I'm sure you can. There are tons of people out there that use them and they're just fine, but just for me, it's not something that I use very often. All right, folks, next here, we're going to get to the second half of the episode, and this is a segment that's kind of become an annual thing for us at this point because, you guys know, it's show season, and the fishing expos are right around the corner no matter where you live. You might have already had some, but we are in the heart of show season, of expo season, and they are one of my favorite things on earth because, one, you get to see a ton of gear under one roof, something we don't normally get to do. Yes, you can go on the internet, you can see thousands of items from your couch, but you can't pick up rods, you can't feel reels, you can't closely examine every bait, feel the durability or lack of durability, depending on what you're looking at, and talk face-to-face with the owners, ask them questions in real time like you can at an in-person expo. And then two, because you get to be around other anglers all day long, and you get to learn from the best in the business through a ton of seminars that are usually taking place at each of these expos with some of the biggest names in fishing. So today, we're bringing back on our friend David Hoheisel, owner of the National Fishing Expos, to talk about their flagship expo, one of my favorite weekends of the year, the National Fishing Expos Columbus Show. And right now, before we get into this, I can officially announce that we will be there all 3 days. I will have a booth. When you guys are walking in, it's like probably the second or third aisle on the right when you walk in the main door. So come over, say hi. I'll be hanging out with you guys all weekend long. We'll be talking fishing. I'll have stuff for sale this time. So we'll have Tackle Talk tumblers. We'll have a few hats. And I'm excited to say we're going to have some Jig Masters lures at the table to sell to you guys. So we've got the Jig Masters Micro Buzz and we've got the sled heads. And I'm not making any money on these, right? I'm just selling them for Cody because they're two of my favorite things that you cannot get anywhere else at the expo. So the Micro Buzz, obviously the lure that I designed with Cody's help to throw a buzz grub on. So it's got that thick 50 thou wire on it. It's got a finesse blade, no skirt, a screw lock, super sharp VMC hook, a custom head design, and it all comes in at like under 3 inches long total and at like 3/16 of an ounce. So it's small, it's finessey, and it's a fish catching machine that was made to take like a 3-inch grub on the back of it so you can fish it fast like a regular buzz bait, or you can fish it slow like a wake bait. So I'll have those at the booth, and then I asked Cody to make a few hundred bags of sled heads, and these are the only swim bait heads that I throw a Big Joshy swim bait on. And if you're coming to the Columbus Expo, Big Joshy swim baits are one of the, if not the most popular booth at the show, and these are the specific heads that I use to throw those swim baits. Awesome head design that works with that body roll of a Big Joshy and those type of swim baits. Great for dragging around rock, a good hook on it. It's got a screw lock, so it makes those plastics last way longer. So I will have both of those at the booth. Again, I'm not trying to make a bunch of money off here. I'm just selling them because they're something that I wish for years and years were available at this expo, and I have the opportunity now to make them available to you guys that are coming to the show. So I'm excited to see you guys, to catch up. We have the whole 3 days to hang out. I also believe I'll be doing a seminar at least one of the days that weekend. I'm not sure yet, but I'll announce that when that schedule comes out. But I wanted to have David back on here to give you guys an idea of what you can expect at this year's show and why it's either a great option for you if you're a diehard angler or if you just want to come out and have fun with the family one day. And then a little teaser, if you listen closely, he announces that maybe one of our most recent guests, maybe one of the most dominant anglers on the planet, is going to be there leading some seminars, having some meet and greet opportunities, and be there for one of those days. So among some other familiar names, you'll have to listen closely to see the name that he drops, and we talk about being there on one of the days that weekend. But to finish it out, the show here today, let's jump right into our conversation with David Hoheisel, previewing the National Fishing Expos Columbus Show coming up February 9th through 11th. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and to close out today's show, we are joined by David Hoheisel, owner of the National Fishing Expos, and specifically, coming up, we've got 2 in our area here in Ohio, and then a couple more. So I wanted to have David on, obviously, to kind of preview show season. So David, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it.
So really quickly, I obviously wanted to have you on. We're approaching Expo season rapidly here, and it is like my favorite time of year where it kind of feels like you're starting that kind of turning over a new leaf. We're getting into this one will be 2024, obviously. You start getting excited. You start buying tackle, prepping for the spring, and we have the National Fishing Expos Columbus show coming up here pretty soon. So I've got it marked on my calendars. I know a lot of other people do, but first off, kind of the basics. When is the Columbus Fishing Expo? What are the hours, and what can kind of folks expect this year from the show?
So the dates this year are February 9th through the 11th. We open at 12 at noon on Friday, goes till 7 p.m. Friday evening. Saturday it opens at 10 a.m. and it goes till 6 p.m. And then Sunday is 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I hate to brag, but I still feel like it's one of the best shows in the country. It's good to see everybody every year. You come every year, you have a booth. People get together, they have fun. Great deals on tackle. I pride myself on bringing the best speakers in the country. This year we got Jacob Wheeler. We've got Timmy Horton coming. So Timmy's bringing his whole gear and all the tackle that he sells. And then we've got Joe Thomas also coming on the bass side. So it's going to be a great show.
How many booths, like rough idea, can people expect? For like people that have never been to this show before, I'll never forget the first time I walked through the entrance there and you look and you're like, you're expecting, you go to some of these local shows and get-togethers and stuff, and then you walk in, you're like, holy moly, this whole expo center is huge. So how many booths are you expecting this year?
We should have over 200 booths this year. And we'll have probably 6 boat dealers. So if anybody's in the market to buy a new bass boat, a new fishing boat, we'll have pretty much every line of fishing boat there at the expo. We're in 155,000 square feet. When we first started, I think it was even before you and I met, we started out in 50,000 square feet. And after the second or third year, it was so crowded, we had to jump up to the 155. And we fill it every year. And I thank all your listeners and everybody that comes. This year, we're allowing kids 12 and under get in for free. So for each adult ticket, I want them to bring their kids, their grandkids, because we've got to get them in the sport of fishing. If you have a 13 to 17-year-old, it's $5.
That's one of my favorite things too, right? It's like you get the family together, and nowadays everything's so darn expensive and prices of everything are going up. It's like if you want just a fun day to go out with the family, and I know we were talking before we started recording of some of the additional things that folks can expect to see at the expo this year, just in addition to, all of the baits and the speakers and everything. So if you are bringing a family and you're bringing the kids, what else can they expect to keep them entertained this year?
So this year, I've kind of stepped up my game for the kids zone and for adults because I'm just a big kid. So we've hired a Big Fun Circus. And so as long as it's not like 4 degrees and ice and snowing on Friday morning, you should expect to see them dressed up on stilts, doing juggling, doing balloons. So while people are waiting in line because they do get there early to be the first ones, we're going to have entertainment out there, and then they're going to walk the show, and then they're going to be running the whole interactive kids zone, which has the trout pond. It has interactive games, but they're going to bring just another level to our kids zone. That's the best that we've ever had. So pretty excited about that. That's kind of the new entertainment part of the show, basically, for the kids.
All right, we'll get back to David here in a second, but first, this conversation is brought to you by RTIC Coolers. You guys know if you're looking for hard coolers, soft coolers, drinkware, anything you could need out there in the outdoors, RTIC has you covered. Or it's football season, and we have some of the biggest football games of the year happening in the next couple weeks. If you need a cooler for your tailgate or the big game, check out RTIC. I've owned their hard coolers, I've owned their soft coolers, all their mugs and tumblers and everything. They are first rate, and I know every time I look at that tumbler or look at that cooler and it's got RTIC on the front, I didn't overpay for it, and it's not going to let me down. Rugged exteriors, lightweight construction, first-class insulation, multi-day ice retention, all at half the price of the other guys. So go check them out over at www.rticoutdoors.com. They have new sales all the time, so be sure to check back often. Again, www.rticoutdoors.com. Keep the adventure going with RTIC. All right, let's get back to our conversation with David Hoheisel. And then for the folks like us that are listening to the show, kind of like the fish nerds out there, one of my favorite things about the expos, and honestly, from the time that I started going until still today, like I'll make time to go check out the seminars. Like I think that's, it's cool to go around and pick up baits and meet the local bait makers and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, if you just want to go to a place and be able to hear tactics, not only from the national people that you mentioned. I know you said Wheeler's going to be there, Timmy Horton's going to be there, but then you got local people too who are also just hammers around our area. So you can listen to guys that fish the same, reservoirs and the same rivers and creeks that you fish, and you have multi-species guys too. So I think that's important. Yeah, we get caught up in the bass a lot of times, but you've got people like Russ Bailey coming if you're a crappie guy. Yeah. Mark, I always mispronounce his last name. Blauvelt, I think is his name.
Yeah, Blauvelt. Mark Blauvelt. He had the state record catfish.
Yep. So catfish guys, Chad Harmon, who's a musky hammer around here. So if you are like a multi-species guy, it's worth coming and checking out too. I think it's important to remember it's not just a bass show.
Well, that's exactly right. And we kind of focus on bass because that's kind of in the industry. That's like the number one thing you see on TV. But we've got Jeremy Madeling for crappie coming. So we try to do, 2 seminars of muskies, at least 2 seminars of crappies. We'll have probably 3 walleye seminars. So I've got a Deffy Ball coming from Ohio. He's great walleye fisherman. So we'll have 3 or 4 walleye seminars. The other thing I totally forgot about is, this year we picked up a brand new title sponsor, and Miller Tech Lithium Batteries has come on as the National Fishing Expos title sponsor. And we're actually going to be giving away a $4,100 lithium battery package giveaway on Friday at 5 p.m. And so anybody that comes to the show on Friday, as soon as you walk in the door, you'll see a QR code. You scan it. You take a picture of yourself at the show. That shows that you're actually in the building and you're registered to win. That's all you have to do.
Oh,
now,
cool.
If somebody it's very cool. And we're going to actually be giving away on the hour $100 gift cards with 10 vendors at the show. $10 coupons. So somebody's going to win $100. They can go to around 10 different vendors. They're going to get free whatever they want to buy for the $10. But if they go to the grand prize area, which will be in the front left of the building, and they want to participate in a social media contest, they get 5 extra entries into the grand prize. So that's Friday's grand prize. Saturday, we are giving away an 8 horsepower Mercury from Sizzle Marine. And on Sunday, we're giving a fully rigged kayak, and that's from Raccoon Creek Outfitters. And Yak Gadget is actually going to mount everything. It's going to be a fully rigged. So that's on Sunday. So every day you should come to the expo, check in. You don't have to pay anything extra. There's no raffle tickets. You're just entered in, and I hope you win.
That's awesome. So you said a whole lithium pack on Friday. You've got an outboard motor. You've got a full kayak.
And
that's awesome.
I forgot to mention. So we're just that. This is all going to be going up on the website here in the next day. And then Briarwood. I don't know if you've heard or been out to Briarwood. That's out in Mansfield. That's the trout and hunting farm, or not farm, but lodge, right?
Yep.
They're giving away a 5-person sleepover, fish for 2 days, and an 8-person. So again, all you have to do is check in, and you're eligible to win. And so this year, I mean, especially with the economy and how things are, it is $15 this year for an adult. But you bring 2 kids, bring 2 grandkids. You can't go to the movies. You can't go to McDonald's on $15. So we still have a great value, and we've got some great prize giveaways this year. So Kid Zone with the fun circus and all the prizes. All the great speakers. I don't know. I think this could be our best year ever.
And then obviously the final thing here is the baits themselves and the exhibitors. And I love the fact that you can touch all of these things. You can go meet the people that are painting the custom crankbaits. You can go meet the guys that are pouring the soft plastics. I think it's a cool part about Expo season. So in addition to probably the old faithfuls and what everybody loves about the Expo, what can people expect to see in terms of exhibitors, both kind of some fan favorites and some new folks you're excited about?
Sure. Of course, Nick Folks, He started out with me 12 years ago when he was 17 years old, and he's half colorblind. I don't know if you knew that. And I saw him on Facebook, and I said, man, that kid can really paint. I said, hey, you need to come to our first expo. And I told him the price. He said, I can't afford that. I said, listen, come to the show, give me $100. He brought 300 baits. He was sold out by Sunday at 10 a.m. And now he sells 2,000 or 3,000 baits every year. So, Nick's there. We've picked up a lot of new vendors, and I apologize, I'm getting old nowadays. But if someone goes to I'm just getting old. Too many vendors remember. But with that being said, if you go to the Facebook, National Fishing Expos Columbus Facebook, we actually have a new just Facebook type of video promotion, and we're highlighting all the new vendors that are coming to the show. Now one comes to mind that is actually pretty neat is Japan Tackle is coming. And Japan Tackle, he is, I'm not going to try to pronounce his first name, but he is like a rep for all the Japanese companies in the United States. And he will be there bringing baits and selling baits. And it's he's never really done a retail type of show, but all these baits you hear about, and they're going to be here at the show.
That's cool, because the JDM stuff, there's people that go nuts for that kind of stuff, because it always seems like Japan's like a couple years ahead of United States in terms of the bait market and, what people are doing and different rigs and things like that. So that's very cool. And then you said, obviously, Nick Folks will be there. Big Joshy will be there. I'm sure, there will be all of the local guys that you love seeing here. But then it's also important to remember there's other things than just baits. So I know you've got probably, a bunch of kayak dealers. You got boat dealers. You got salsa and jerky. I mean, there's something.
The kayak, I'm glad you brought that up. We're giving away the kayak on Sunday, but I've donated probably 1,500 square feet, maybe 2,000 square feet. And anybody that is a kayak fisherman that has a rig boat that he thinks he has the best rig boat in the country, he can call Raccoon Creek, sign up. It doesn't cost anything. He can bring his boat into the expo, stand there, talk to everybody, teach him about why he rigged it up this way. And Raccoon Creek is giving away a first place, second place, and third place prize. So anybody that wants to participate, bring your kayak in, touch base with them. But then if you're in the market of buying or wanting to learn how to rig, you have to come to the show this year, because there's going to be probably a dozen kayaks competing. And you're going to learn everything you need to know about rigging. We've got seminars about rigging kayaks. So I'm glad you brought that up about kayaks. And that kayak fishing, that seemed like last year, that's really taken off. So no, it's going to be a fun time. And, of course, you're going to be speaking. I think I got you at least a slot this year. It'll be posted tomorrow. And so everyone looks forward to seeing you speak at the show.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we're looking forward to it too. Like I said, it's always fun to go to somewhere like that where you know that everybody in that building has a common interest and you're not like the weird fish guy anymore. Like everybody in the building is the weird fish guy, so we all get along and you make a bunch of friends, and you get to talk about the thing that we all love, obviously. So it is the National Fishing Expos Columbus show. We should also mention before I let you go, you got a couple other expos too. It's not just Columbus. So what else do you have on the docket this year?
So this year we've got Columbus is February 9th through the 11th, and then we're following up the Cincinnati show, which is March 1st and 2nd. So that's a 2-day event. We shortened it up, and we moved it from a January date to end of February, first weekend of March. We think that's going to help out attendance. So we're going to have great vendors there. The Big Fun Circus is coming. I'm going to have the trout pond for the first time ever in Cincinnati. So everybody from Dayton South and to Kentucky, Southern Indiana, West Virginia, they need to come. Cincinnati, it's going to be the best show that we have. Last year we had Fort Worth, Texas. It was a great show. I rescheduled this year. I put my $12,000 deposit on the building, and I get a call as soon as I send out the contracts from the 4 boat dealers. And I said, David, you're not going to believe this. The Dallas Boat Show that's been canceled for 3 years due to COVID announced their dates, and it's on the same weekend as your expo, and we can't be at 2 places at one time. And they had to go to that show because they sell big ocean boats. And so and those boats are 100, 200, 300, 400,000. they couldn't miss that show and they couldn't be at two places. So I postponed Fort Worth to 2025. Kansas City, unfortunately, it just never really worked for us. We might find a new location in KC, but we've got a couple of new locations that we're not ready to announce. So expect some new things for the National Fishing Expos coming probably middle of March.
And then finally, where can folks get tickets if they do want to come to Columbus or Cincinnati?
So if you buy them online, nationalfishingexpos.com, or you can come to the gate. Buy them at the gate. If you're a senior over 62, I believe my wife has it. And if you have a military, we'll have a discount, but that's only at the gate because that's the only way we can really verify. But to skip the lines, I recommend going online, buying your ticket for both your kids and for yourself at nationalfishingexpos.com.
Well, like you said, we'll be there. We'll have a booth. We'll be speaking. And I encourage anybody who's within driving distance, come check it out. Because like you said, David, it is like the best $15 you're going to spend, especially when you can bring your family to. You can have a great time. And if you are, a fishing nerd, like a lot of us that listen to the show, it is just kind of like heaven when you walk in the door. You're like, this is what I wish we had in terms of like down the street to buy tackle or to stock up for the year or to learn from people like Jacob Wheeler and Timmy Horton about bass tactics. We don't get that in our backyard here in Columbus very often. So kudos to you guys. Hats off. And we're looking forward to a great 2024 show season. Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'll see you soon.
All right, that is our episode today. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Again, mark your calendars, come out, hang out with us at the Columbus Fishing Expo coming up next month. I'll have more information on future episodes as we get a little closer. But again, thank you guys so much for listening. Find us on the website, tackletalkpodcast.com. Shoot us an email, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast, and we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2021. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.